everybody. Welcome back to Current Talk. I'm Faith.
And I'm Cameron, and welcome back to Current Talk Podcast, everyone. Today we have another special guest on our podcast. Today we have Dora Zhang. Dora is currently an MBA candidate at Harvard Business School, and she's also, like me, a past Disney professional intern. And so we're going to be interviewing Dora today, and she's going to talk about her experience so far as a MBA student at a very prestigious Ivy League school we all know as Harvard University. So we're going to let Dora go ahead and introduce herself as well as where you can find her on social media.
Great. Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here today with Cameron and Faith. As they mentioned, I'm a second year student here currently. And before Harvard Business School, I worked at a video streaming platform in Beijing and also spent some time in financial services in Hong Kong. But all of my work experience was in Asia. And I did intern at Disney this past summer where I crossed paths with Cameron there. And on social media, you can find me at Life by Dora on Instagram. Not very active, but sometimes I do engage in some stories and messages. And I'm also on LinkedIn under my name.
Alrighty. And as a disclaimer before we get started, Faith and I, as you all know, are both university students, and we are recording this podcast episode we're recording in 2022 Current Talk on campus for the first time. So we have to follow the COVID regulations of wearing our masks. So bear with us on the audio, but that is why we kind of sound a little muffled, but just wanted to give that disclaimer. But I think for the most part, the audio is okay for the end of that, but we can. Alrighty. So first, for we have a couple of questions we're going to go back and forth and ask. So first, what inspired you to pursue a master's degree in business, and why did you choose to go to Harvard for the program?
Yeah, sure. I think for the master's degree, it was a couple of things. One was, as I mentioned, I started working in finance, graduating from undergrad, and I knew I wanted to pivot and explore more of the entertainment and media world. So there was that aspect of pivoting across industries. And I was starting to do that as I was applying to by moving to a streaming company in China. And then the second part was I wanted to pivot in terms of geography as well. So I grew up and went to school in the US, but I did have all of my work experience in Asia. And I knew I wanted to come back to the US to at least work here for a few years again. So because of that geographical pivot, I thought that getting a master's degree would help me not only move location, but also expand my network to more of the Western Hemisphere. And then lastly, I think I would just say it's another pivot from a service company to a corporate. So when I was working in financial services, it's really just seeing client after client, and a lot of times more kind of working for benefits of another company or another owner. Versus, I think if you're working in a corporate environment, you get to really own the business and really think from their perspective. And I think over the long term, at least for me, that feels a little bit more rewarding. So those are kind of three pivots that I was looking to do with the master's degree. And then regarding Harvard, here they're pretty known for a teaching style called the case method, where instead of professors lecturing to students, we would read a case and prepare for class. And then the whole class, it's basically students debating and having a conversation with each other. So it really puts you into the shoes of a real business problem. And therefore, I thought this would be kind of like gaining firsthand experience in the classroom in an accelerated way. And I thought that would really help me with all of my pivots as I was trying to kind of move into a new role. And then I think also the Harvard Business School alumni pool is a lot bigger than a lot of other business schools. And that's because every class here is around 900 people versus some other business schools, which are usually around the 300 to 400 level. And therefore here, because of the wider alumni network, I thought that would be helpful for me as well as I was moving into new territories that I was exploring.
Yeah,
Mm.
that is so cool. I can totally relate with the case studies because for those of you who don't know, I'm in nursing school, and so when teachers have those like case studies, it actually like helps like me and my classmates think about real world situations and how we would actually respond to them. And I actually think that is a really great way of learning because it kind of puts you in, like you said, in that real life situation, and kind of gauges your thinking as to like what you would do, what you would say. And I really like how you talked about that Harvard has like a great networking, especially, how you've had like a lot of your connections back in Asia. I feel like it's great that you are um, trying to expand your connections and the different types of people that you meet. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
been a great
and
experience so far.
yeah, I totally agree with Faith. As you all know, I'm not a business or nursing major in college. I'm a communications major, but just hearing from the case studies that you guys have both had to endure, so sometime during your coursework so far in school, I could definitely see how it can be mentally challenging as well as physically challenging of not just like learning the cases and how to deal with them, but also like applying them to the future within like your respective fields. I had a class my sophomore year of college that was kind of close to what you guys are both doing in your respective fields of like getting a case, analyzing it, and then going forward what you would do in a real world situation, and then also working with the team. I don't remember the exact name of the class, but I definitely took a class that was related to that and had a couple different like group exercises that we had to do as well as just like individual projects. But I I'm also really big into watching like mystery or like any type of any type of stories, and just like watching like storytelling of like someone is giving a case and then they then unpack it, they see like all the components, and then going forward seeing the journey of how you then go forward and completing and also getting to the bottom of the actual situation. But I think that is definitely really really cool that that happens not just you would think in business, but also in other fields like nursing with Faith's pre-nursing program for sure.
Yeah. And so the next question that we have for you is, what are some negative stereotypes about business majors or business graduate students that are far from the truth?
Sure. I think the biggest one that I've seen so far is probably that business students are not creative at all. They can only do finance or consulting. Those are traditionally and historically the two major kind of pools that graduates go into. But because of that, and I think especially in media and entertainment, which is such a creative business, a lot of times the pushback is that having an MBA degree is actually something that's negative on your resume when you're trying to break into the industry. But I think to that stereotype, I think a lot is changing. Even now, we see different schools are known for different verticals. So, for example, Harvard only offers a general management degree because they really want the students here to be relatively more well rounded so that we can be flexible in the future. And meanwhile, maybe schools like Wharton are much more known for their financial specialty in the MBA program. And I think even to that point, I think uh, people who pursue investment, finance, consulting can still be creative. So, for example, you have venture capitalists who are trying to invest into newly launched companies, but they do have to be creative with how these companies are breaking into the market and how they're trying to scale across regions or products. Um, and then I think also the students here, the backgrounds are just very diverse. For me, for example, in undergrad, I double majored in economics and visual arts. So I like to always bring that up to say, hey, I was a painter once. So maybe, don't discount me from the very beginning. And here, obviously, there are a lot of bankers and consultants, but I've also heard that we have, Broadway stars in the alumni network. There are people who've been to professional chef school, and then we have many, many veterans in the community. So just people from all kinds of different backgrounds. And I think there's definitely the disciplined so-called business side, but everyone definitely, has their own special kind of creativity that they can bring.
Yeah.
Mm,
And I think it's interesting that you say that a stereotype about people who go into business, how they're viewed as like not creative, because I always viewed people who go to business as creative people. I always
mm,
just assumed that they had some great idea. And so I was actually pretty surprised when you said that some people view them as not creative because I actually think the opposite. And in regards like to the connection of like nursing and just like the different aspects of where people like come from, um, to be honest, like it's very interesting how, we have people in our program that have come from like different like avenues, and there might be people who like specialized in public health that want to do nursing, or they majored in art and want to become a nurse. Like I've heard of those stories again and again, and I find it so amazing how like they majored in one completely different thing that you would never associate with nursing, but now they're like, hey, like, I want to become a nurse. I think that's really cool. And I guess I can relate in that sense, like how diverse, like, the profession is. And just people come with different experiences, different backgrounds. So I thought that was really cool how you mentioned that, not everyone who goes into business school is, an accountant or works in finance, that there are people from different walks of life.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Faith, it's
And
great to sorry, Faith, it's
oh
great to
no, you
hear
can
that
go. Sorry.
that you think that business leaders are creative. I think I would agree definitely. I think now the ones who are in the headlines or get a little bit more exposure, I think definitely they're the visionary leaders that we see out there. I think maybe it's more in this transitory phase where you have a few years of work experience and you're trying to move into mid levels and corporates, where there's a little bit more pushback. But I love that you're so open minded, and I definitely hope that more people are out there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was gonna add on to your point, Faith, of when I initially think of business majors, anyone that's pursuing any sort of economic, finance related degree program, or just in general focus of study, I automatically think of the word entrepreneur. And that to me indicates creativity of like starting your own business venture or just creating your own business. And I think definitely getting like business, especially when we think of like business classes, there's like a lot of analytical components as well as just like a lot of math required. I think that's probably where a lot of people get like, oh, like you want to go into finance or you don't want to do anything creative with your degree. But I definitely agree with you guys both that there are so many creative ventures and career fields that business majors, MBA students such as yourself, Dora, can go into. And I think what's also changing too, especially within the entertainment industry, is like I think now more than ever too, especially with the pandemic, we need like business people that understand how businesses run, understand how businesses work, just have that knowledge just because while creativity is good and it's good to be original and have new ideas and to be innovative, if you don't know how to run a business, then you're out of luck. But I definitely agree that while there is negative stereotypes, I think there's so many more pros than cons in studying business and being a business major or business student for sure. But going into our next question we have is what is your ideal day of school like as an MBA student at Harvard?
I guess for this question, if you say my personal ideal day would be the weekend where I get to just chill at home. But I'll give you a little bit of color of what, a typical day, if everything goes well, what that might look like. So in the morning, we have a lot of flexibility with scheduling when our classes are. I like to knock them out mostly in the morning. So my mornings are usually filled with bunch of different classes, and then usually we'll grab lunch on campus with some friends. Right now we're having a little bit of a COVID spike, so lunch is to go, but hopefully it'll get back to being in the dining hall soon. And then in the afternoon, after we're done with classes, there are usually a bunch of club meetings, and all of the clubs here, and I believe at a lot of undergrad universities as well, but all of the clubs are student run. So there's actually a lot of work to be done at these weekly meetings. And I'm personally very involved with the Entertainment and Media Club and also the Women's Student Association on campus. So very busy with different meetings, or whether in smaller or larger groups. And then try to get some homework done in the late afternoon. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of that is just reading through cases and preparing for class the next day, to take a stance on a certain topic, and then sometimes having the backup of the other side, so that if you get called on in class, you can argue that as well. In
Mm-hmm.
the afternoon, depending on the day, sometimes we'll do some networking, whether on campus or over Zoom with alums or other industry professionals. If it's recruiting season, there might be some interviews as well. Obviously, very easy to do over the internet now. And then last semester, I actually did an in semester internship. So my afternoons were a lot of work getting done outside of school. And then it'll probably get to dinner time, and usually a lot of students live across or live around campus, so we can actually go to each other's apartments to have dinner, or sometimes we'll go to a local restaurant. And then if it's a chiller night, maybe play some games or watch some movies. Um, and then sometimes, unfortunately, you have to come back at a late hour and continue to do more case reading. But that's pretty much kind of the busy day in the life of an MBA.
Yep, I relate to that. Just the amount of reading I have to do, the amount of just preparing and studying that I have to do. It's a lot, you know. And to be honest, I don't really have so much like assignments this semester. It's more studying, tests, all that. So um, I may not have a lot of assignments, but I do have to constantly read and study. So I totally understand and can relate on that end. And it's actually really funny because I would prefer like morning classes and everything, but sometimes like my schedule is like all over the place. Like sometimes I have stuff in the morning, sometimes I have stuff in the afternoon, and I really have to, plan what I have to do. Um, and sometimes it gets crazy because, you may be used to, doing this, but then, next week is different and you have an extra thing that you have to do. So I relate on just like those crazy days and just everything that you have to like do. And even when you have fun, coming back and doing more work, that is the story of my life.
That is the worst.
Yes, I definitely can relate to that too. I literally was telling Faith as we were walking over to the building that we're recording this episode that Thursdays this semester are my most, I want to say, hectic days simply because I have three back to back classes that are like pretty much consuming most of the day. So I have like a class from 10 to 11:40, 20-minute break, and then I have a class from 12 to 1:40, 20-minute break, and then I have my last class from 2 to 4:30, and then by the time I get out of that class it's pitch black outside with daylight savings. So Thursdays this semester is definitely going to be like a go 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 day, and I'm going to wake up, start the day, do class all day, and then end the day when it's like the day's already over. And one of the biggest things that I'm also trying to do, especially with like this is our first week of classes, is just trying to figure out, okay, like what days am I going to do homework? What days are going to be chill days? What times of the day can I like squeeze in maybe like taking a nap, watching a YouTube video, literally just like thinking about life and just not doing anything and kind of just having a mental break. But I mean, we'll see with my course load and just like all the outside commitments that I have with classes and organizations and everything. But I'm definitely in the mode of trying to find a school life balance for sure. But on a good day, we'll have a good nap in, go to class, maybe have lunch, mostly just lots of snacks, go to another class, come back, and then do homework and then go to bed. It's probably, I want to say, my typical day, but I can definitely relate. The work life or school life balance is definitely a struggle at times.
Yes.
Well, just listening to you guys, I'm having PTSD from my undergrad days. But I will say one kind of benefit that I have is that this is a secret, open secret, but for the MBA degree, your grades don't matter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
mostly pass fail. We have high pass and low pass. So you can, try to work for the high pass for the honors degree, but I have many professors who've told me that they've never heard of any MBA graduate needing to provide a transcript to any employer. And then obviously if you pursue entrepreneurship, there's no need for that either.
Wow.
So I will say that, while we have to get some work done, there is a little bit of room for slacking off on a difficult night, or just keeping quiet that day in class, which I do know is hard to do in undergrad.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say, I mean, obviously nursing is not the same way, but I have heard that, when you do get out into the workforce, a lot of employers like won't ask you like your GPA or what grades you got. I think for them, as long as you pass the NCLEX, I think that's like the most important thing. Unless you're doing like some internship or um, some, I guess, program that wants to see how you're doing. I think that's where grades, are important. But, as long as you're passing your classes and you end up getting that license, and especially with the nursing shortage that's going on, they need nurses. And then, it's not to say that you can slack off because no, you can't, especially if you are truly serious about being a nurse. Like, you obviously need to study, you need to put in the work because one day, the thing that's between a patient living and dying is you, and you have to know what to do. So, you know,
Yeah.
obviously that's kind of how I think about it. And that's what motivates me to study and to actually get my life together because, I want to be that nurse that if something happens, I know what to do in order to save the patient's life. So that's a big motivation for me. But going on to the next question that we have for you, what are your future plans after graduating from MBA school?
Um, yeah, I'm hoping to continue working in media and entertainment. I think, again, finance and consulting are the traditional industries for MBA students. So they do recruiting a little bit earlier. So they're actually just finalizing a lot of roles right now. But I think for most other sectors, whether it's entertainment or healthcare, or startups, especially, a lot of the recruiting will be in spring. So we'll see what the next few months hold. Like I mentioned, I originally wanted to pivot back to the US. But I think because of the pandemic and just the difficulty with international travel, I'm actually leaning a little bit more towards going back to Asia because I have
Yeah.
family there. My grandfather is he's 95, so much older.
Wow.
So I think I would prefer to be closer to him and to my family. Um, but obviously, we'll see what opportunities come up in the next few months.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's so cool how, you want to, go back and, be with family. Because I know some people, they're like, oh, once I get that degree, I'm going to take off and go, different places. But, I love how you're like, oh, after that degree, I really want to spend time with family and be around them. I think that's pretty cool too. Especially, spending time with your, grandpa, because, I feel that because I have a grandma who's like in her late 90s too. And I don't get to see her a lot because she's in a different country. So, honestly, the time that you spend, it's worth it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think what's also really cool, I think, right now in the times that we're in with just like the pandemic is like it's okay if you don't have like anything set in stone just because no one else does. And that takes like a big weight off my shoulders too, in a sense of like when I'm planning for the future, like compared to like 2019 cam of planning to like 2022 like pre and post pandemic, I was always stressed out. Like I thought, I had to do this, this, and this, and this now, because this was before COVID. Everything for the most part was set in stone. Things were happening when they were going to happen. But I feel like once COVID hit in 2020 and everything kind of just went up into the air, and it's still all up into the air in 2022. We kind of see this. I want to say re dedication period of just like whatever you can get together right now is okay, and just like at the end of the day staying safe, staying healthy, especially we have the Omicron variant, we have all these different variants that are coming from the across the globe, and traveling internationally, and just like a whole bunch of stuff right now is just like a lot, and no one knows any answers for sure. So I definitely think that's truly amazing that you have intentions to go back to your home and to be with your family, especially after achieving such a big milestone of getting your MBA from Harvard University. Like, I think that alone, take your time, enjoy, being with your family. And, I always think of it as like the jobs are always going to be there, but your time with your loved ones aren't. So I definitely think that is a awesome thing that you're doing
Thank
towards
you.
graduating. Yes. Um, but that actually leads us to our last question we have for you is what advice would you give to anyone who is interested in pursuing an MBA degree?
I would probably say I think the number one thing is to really know why you would want an MBA. Obviously, the title is great. To have it on the resume is definitely a confidence booster. But I think um, the timing is really important too. I think, for example, when I graduated from undergrad, I was in a job that I enjoyed decently for a few years. And, people around me, all of my previous classmates were just going to different grad schools or changing jobs. And then you do feel that peer pressure of, am I remaining stagnant while everyone else is doing something new? But I never really felt the need or felt the want to get an MBA. And therefore, I think that's why I didn't come do it earlier. So I think you really need to make sure that it makes sense to you. And once I realized that it could help me with the few pivots and transitions that I mentioned earlier, I thought, maybe now is actually the right time to do it for myself. And I think this is really important to take a long time to consider versus like I'm going to make the decision the next hour or so. I think it's going to take some time because it's a 2 year commitment in the US. It's 1 year, I think, internationally, but it's going to cost a lot of money and a lot of time and probably opportunities out there. For example, you might be giving up a promotion or a great step up somewhere to spend 2 years here. And that's going to impact not only your career, but also your personal life. So I think just knowing for sure what the MBA will be able to offer and also how this fits in with your broader plan, at least in the near term, I think that's really important to consider.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. Because um, kind of just hearing what other college students go through and how they get their degree and all that. Sometimes like they don't have a specific reason why they're pursuing this like a type of degree, and sometimes it may be some they could say, oh, I'm doing pursuing pre-med because I want to be a doctor and make lots of money, but then they don't really realize that there's a lot of things that you have to do, a lot of classes that you have to take in order to become a doctor. And I know some people who, went the pre-med route, spent like all this money, and then they realize, oh, I don't want to become a doctor, and let me do something else, or let me transfer to this other school. And I know this is, undergrad and all that, and, you're in a different place right now. But I think it's also like applicable um, too, because, lots of people spend money like going into college and, you know, doing something that, they're not really sure about. And, that kind of wastes like a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of stress, honestly. So yeah, I totally agree with, thinking about what you want to do and making sure it's the right decision. And it's something that you're passionate about, because honestly, life is too short to not do what you want to do and what you want to love, what you love. So
That's a great
Yes.
summary.
yeah.
Yes, like to the podcast viewers, I don't know if you heard the snapping from my microphone, but that honestly is the quote of the podcast episode. Life is way, yes, Faith, yes, life is way too short to not only do something you're not passionate about, but to do something just to say you did something. And I think, we see like, this pandemic happening and we realize, like we're out here, going through this pandemic and we're going through all these new experiences. And I think, if anything, it's kind of been a wake up call for a lot of people to really just like reassess, their situation. It's been, I want to say, an enlightening time for people to also get inspired to try new things that they maybe didn't have enough time to do when everything was busy in 2019 pre-pandemic. And now that we're for the most part all working remotely at home, and there's a big transition from going working in the office to being in front of your Zoom laptop, or doing Zoom calls for your computer for work. And I definitely, man, that literally just shot up the energy for me. That quote is the quote of the day. And I definitely agree. I know just from the time that Faith and I have gone to our current institution, a handful of students that I know that either don't go here anymore or that are still here, that came into college majoring in something else and are something different right now, or come into college undecided and are still figuring out what they want to do. And to any of our podcast listeners, if you're listening to this episode, if you're currently an undecided major, it is okay. I feel like society has put a negative connotation about coming into college and not knowing exactly what you want to do right when you get here is a bad thing. College, I think, especially your undergrad years, is the time for you to try new things, see what you like, experiment, explore, see what your passions are. Just so you don't get all the way to the end of your degree. You have your degree in hand, but then when it's time to start looking for jobs, and you're kind of limited a little bit, especially with like experience and having certain like certifications of like different roles you can do, and you don't actually want to do that job, like you're kind of stuck unless you want to like go back to school and get another degree. So that is, I definitely want to say, if you were to take anything from this podcast, that is the quote you take with you um, home after you listen to this episode. But I think if you don't have anything else, Faith, that is going to be it for this episode.
Yeah.
That is going to be it for this episode of Current Talk Podcast. Again, a huge thank you to Dora for joining us today.
Yeah, thank
Thank you
you.
so much
Thank you
again
for
for
having
recording
me.
with us. Yes. And as always, if you have any podcast topic ideas or if you just want to add to the conversation, feel free to DM Faith and I at our individual Instagrams, or you can reach out to us on our podcast Instagram, which is at Current Talk Podcast, all in one word on Instagram. And we also have an email, currenttalkpodcast@gmail.com, if you want to reach out to us. And then, as always, we will have a new episode up next week as our weekly episodes, new episodes every Friday. So expect a new podcast a week from today or whatever day you're listening to this. Friday is new podcast day, so definitely stay tuned for future episodes. And don't forget to check out Dora on her socials. We will have all of her information linked in the description of today's episode, so definitely go check her out and follow her there. And yeah, that's going to be it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much again for listening, and we will talk to you guys in our next episode of Current Talk Podcast. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.